6:31, Select Board Work Plan.
I guess I wanted to just make sure you know as far as some of the routine things and then some of the non-routine things. So as far as the routine things, we're required to update in April the local emergency operations plan. It's now actually changed its name to local emergency management plan. Chris Davis has been working on it, and also actually regional planning has also been working on it. And they will have started drafts that I can provide probably at the next meeting. So actually, or I'm sorry, that's on the April 8th agenda, which is on the table.
I'd like to see us have one meeting before we meet with Rick Bingham
Yes.
to go over the capital budget program, so maybe we can get that in the second meeting in April.
Okay.
And that'll be a good primer, I think, for the select board to just start thinking about the capital program. Maybe we can pull out that old copy and see what the town did in the past. If people have kind of structural suggestions about what a capital.
Has there been anything in the past, except for just it coming up and randomly?
There was, Carrie found an old, was it a draft or was it an actual?
No, they actually used it. It was about 20 years old, so they're.
They
So
had
they
have
have
one to collect, or they proposed collecting fees for recreation. What do they call that? Developer fees. There's a name for it that I'm spacing.
Impact fees.
Impact fees, and you have to have a capital plan and by law in order to charge impact fees, which we ended up not charging, which is probably why the capital plan just went
Out of sight.
fizzled.
And we'll be using it more for planning purposes when it
Yeah.
comes to the budget season each year. So it probably is only a 15 or 20-minute agenda item.
Okay. I also wanted to ask, the Recreation Commission has been working, and the director have been working on various things related to the beach. And we had a session before town meeting with the Charlie Prout, and we're working on a master plan. And I know this year they do intend to proceed with the playground. And I think they also are interested in looking at the parking area. So I'm wondering if the select board wants to be involved in that, or if you want to let the Recreation Commission move a little bit, further on that and then come to the select board. They've asked, or the chair's asked for a site visit with the select board.
Bill asked.
What's that? Bill did, yeah.
He told me that they were just doing the swing set and they didn't really want to do anything else over there. But
It may have changed. I think it's a good idea to
Yeah.
maybe take point on some of the bigger infrastructure processes.
Okay.
And if we fold it in with a site visit and then
Yeah.
go from there as far as how to plan for doing some build out there. It might be a good way to have everyone on the same page.
yeah, no, I actually had a different motive for asking him. I was volunteering the services of a being educated landscape architect for free. See if he needed it, but he said they really didn't think that they would
Well, we
have
could
any
use that
issues for
in the
that.
future. We could,
As long as I'm
just
still
take
paying his
baby
tuition,
steps
he's
to
gotta
look
do what I
at
tell
it.
him, so. Anyway, so I,
So I
Well,
penciled
that's a
in
beautiful
a
thing.
site visit on April 8th.
Great.
At 5:30, if that works, I know there are some additional interviews that will probably get scheduled, so if that needs to bump to 5 o'clock, would that work for the site visit? I mean,
Yeah, 5
Okay.
o'clock
Okay.
probably be even better.
Okay,
For me, close for you.
Fine.
Carrie, Fritz?
I'm good with 5.
I'm fine.
Okay. 5:15, safely?
Oh, you can start at 5 o'clock. I might be there. Might be able to get there. It's just don't be just on time if not a couple minutes late.
it's only if we need to because of their additional interviews.
Yep.
And I think are we bumping the meeting times to start at 6?
Yeah, tonight I had scheduled some things, so it didn't, I didn't.
For April
Oh.
8th, it's starting at 6:30?
Well, I thought the site visit would sort of be,
An hour.
yeah.
Got it, okay. I just, there were some discussions when Shelburne hired a new police chief to see with our constable, came to me and thought it'd be a good idea to maybe meet again with the police chief and just see what their vision would be for any future police services and to get a gauge of what Charlotte might be looking for in the future. I said I would bring it to the board as like a update or discussion, but in this kind of work plan, wanted to see, Louise, I know you wanted to partner with me on liaising.
Well, I do have, I don't think, right now, I don't think a police force here would be absurd. But I do think what I would like to look at, and this is my own ignorance, is how is the town covered for security? If you have a break-in, you have an immediate situation, you know, I just want to know what that is so that we can make sure that people are protected, and however we need to do that would be great. I mean, we have the world's actually most amazing fire and rescue. So they'll be there within a very short period of time.
Yes, and I mean, the short answer to your question is the Vermont State Police are first responders. They're our prime
Yep,
police force. So if there's a 911 call, it gets routed to the barracks.
Right.
If they have a delayed response based on basically a triage system of
Sure.
importance, they call in support from other surrounding municipal police forces if needed, if they can't respond in the time that they should for the
Well,
nature of the
I
call.
just need to get smart on that.
And it's basically the same system that the ambulance
Okay.
uses. And Shelburne is usually the first one to get
Okay.
called for mutual aid, and then they come down.
Sometimes if it's like an armed situation, they will just, who's ever closest from whatever agency shows up.
Heinsberg, Virginia.
Whoever they,
Good, good.
you know, call the hall, so to speak.
So that is all police services that are independent of any funding from our operating budget in our general fund. But then we have an auxiliary contract with the state police. It used to be with the Shelburne Police for additional policing hours, which is not part of, it's basically a targeted contract. And while they're using those hours, if they see anything illegal, they're obligated to respond. They're still doing general law enforcement, but they're targeted for what we're looking for in the contract, which is mostly speed abatement and safety education. So we have them kind of front-loading more hours during the spring and summer when people are driving faster, and so fewer hours in the winter. But the average is 32 hours a month, and And then there's some residual ticket revenue that comes back to the town if there's any speeding tickets issued. So that's kind of separate from, and it happens to be the state police, but it didn't used to be when it was Shelburne. We kind of had two police forces in town at the same time. So I thought it would be a good idea to meet with the new chief and just more from a curiosity standpoint to see what they're thinking. If they're, I didn't know, wanted to get people's sense of what you think.
In terms of bidding or competing with the state police, or for constable
get to know.
reasons, or for whatever they want?
Yeah, right. And I kind of didn't know what they were looking,
Yeah, okay.
what they were interested in. And so I thought, I could meet with
See
them.
what they
and-
want.
Yeah, if someone else was interested in joining me, I'd be happy to.
I will.
Okay, so I'll set that up and CC you on the emails.
Thank you.
Great.
Just get to know the new chief is a great thing.
Yeah, and he was on the force for a long time and promoted up through the ranks, so I think he knows the town pretty well. Chief Noble. Okay, so that'll kind of be, I'll probably bring that up sometime in May as far as the work plan goes. Maybe an update about that meeting.
Can I ask a question? We talked about 911 calls. Can you just educate me on what we do for a regional dispatch? If we make a 911 call, where is our regional dispatch unit? I know this obviously got a lot of talk, months ago when they were doing consolidated regional dispatch, in other parts of Chittenden County. What actually happens is if we make a 911 call, where's the dispatch center that our call gets routed to?
I've heard.
It depends on how many people are calling 911 at one time. The primary one is Shelburne, but if Shelburne's operators are busy, they will go to another one, and sometimes the original call may go to, I don't know, a couple hours away, at which time the operator that's that far away will pick up. As far as I understand, I guess you'd compare it to the bat phone where he says, so-and-so, there's an emergency here, so it bypasses the looping of who's next. So the dispatcher, whoever gets the call, makes a judgment call as, well, yeah, there's somebody ran through my front yard or somebody standing out there with a gun. So then they would react accordingly if they think it's a big enough emergency, or they will go call directly the agency as opposed to waiting for the local dispatch to get to it. So like I said, it just depends on who's, if there's, like, when there was a sudden squall in the lake, there was probably 20 people in distress. There was people as far away as, I don't know, way south in the county getting all the 911 calls because the local system was just overwhelmed. So,
And there was one situation last year where someone called and realized that the 911 dispatch happened to be in New York, but they still communicate instantly with emergency services.
So, just so I have it right, so if we actually were to call 911, if Shelburne is not overloaded, they would answer the call over there.
yes.
Okay, and then it would bounce to another dispatch if they're really busy or.
And the other dispatchers have the ability to call direct to whatever town, who's ever listed. Like, we're listed for the state police, so they would call them direct and say there's this critical issue, as opposed to waiting to send it back to Shelburne to dispatch the right one.
How does the rest of the work plan look?
We don't have the affordable housing discussion.
It's on the back for
Is it
other
on the
possible
back?
items. We don't have it listed true.
Yep.
We might be able to put an initial discussion on April 22nd if you, if you want to sort of get a sense of where things are at or
To
where,
refresh and.
Right.
And take up again.
yeah. Would that be,
April 22nd? State Park Road, that's the trail?
yeah, that's the trail. Yep.
And
The,
we're in kind of a holding pattern for the grant.
We are in a holding pattern for the grant, and also we have applied for a wetlands permit. They have asked for some additional information, so we're, I guess that's what Jim would talk about a little bit, but we have an application in, it's considered not complete until we get that additional information.
What was the nature of the,
They are looking for some information around the Thorpe Brook area where the wetlands are associated with that. And it appears we will need to apply for an Act 250 amendment because some of the properties that, especially to the west of Thorpe Brook, that the trail crosses have an Act 250 permit, so the trail is considered a change of use. So it's not a huge deal, but it's another step.
and as far as the wetland piece, is that gonna like require a census of species or? Or is it more
I
mapping?
think probably something like that.
Okay.
Right, so it can only be done in the spring, yep, or start in the spring.
the permit process for accessory ag use?
So Aaron said he's been working on some, drafts to bring to the select board, and he's pretty much ready to go. So,
I think where we left it, he was gonna be talking with some other towns about what they're doing and come back for another presentation with the planning commission?
yeah, both of us actually met with the state, and Heinsberg and Shelburne were there as well. And there's been, among planners on the listserv, a fair amount of discussion. So I think he'll come back with some ideas about possible options.
When do you think a good meeting would be to,
Well, I guess, I don't want to overload April 22nd, but that might be, I guess, see how things shake out there, how many interviews. I know we're trying to make reappointments or appointments by April 22nd especially for boards that do development review. So I want to see how many interviews there are on that meeting, and if there's time, we could add, so right now we have capital budgeting, affordable housing potentially, and accessory agricultural uses. So, I mean, the accessory agricultural uses could take up a chunk of time.
yeah, especially with the planning commission here.
So if need be, maybe affordable housing might bump to May if that were, if there was too much on that agenda. Unless,
Are people okay with that?
Yeah.
I'm good with that. May's
Sure.
fine.
It seems like a priority. So, April 22nd. Town beach upgrades, we talked about April 8th, what is it?
Yeah.
Yep, site visit.
Yeah, right now, I don't have time on that meeting scheduled for discussion. I guess that would be a question whether one of the things that's coming up, I think Fritz is familiar with, there's new road standards, and the time to be able to comment on that or the deadline for commenting is April 25th, so I don't know if we want to have that on the April 8th agenda. And also, the road commissioner is going to have a grant application and some other road issues to discuss. So anyway, as far as discussing the beach.
Seems like we moved the site visit time to 5.
Yeah.
So if we made a half-hour site visit, we'd have an hour to kind
Okay.
of discuss it back here, or 45 minutes maybe,
Okay,
while it's fresh in everyone's mind.
okay.
What is that, the beach?
Yeah, so we'll have the site visit at the beach at 5 and try and get back here for 5:30, 5:45. That gives us 45 minutes before the interviews.
We'll meet and we'll all see what, just baby step in the process. It's good. Good, I like it. Just talk about it for a little while and then.
Come back. Management plan for the Burns property?
That, we haven't really discussed, but back when the Vermont Land Trust conserved the property, they asked the town to develop a management plan, and they did, sort of a outline of what that would consist of. And I had asked at the time that the Conservation Commission look at that, and I'm not sure that anything has happened at this point, so it might be something the Conservation can start with and then bring it to the Select Board.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I thought we finally had to approve one. Did we run out of time with something? Did we had to do something?
With the easement, I thought we,
Yeah, and I thought
we
that
made
included
that.
some sort of basic management plan because there was really no plan to do anything with it. But
Wasn't
Maybe
that
not.
around the Mount
the town had
system?
dragged their feet for, what was it, 20 years on that? On solidifying the easement on the Burns
Well,
property?
the easement is in place.
That's done.
Yep,
We did that a year
Yeah.
and a half ago.
yep. But then they asked for, now that there's an easement, now you have to sort of have I guess we said, there are some uses that are proposed, but some of it is considered clay plain forest and whatnot. So how are we going to manage those uses to not infringe on the clay plain forest and other things?
I thought we did something like that. Basic, I don't know. Ask Kate Lampton if she had something.
That
We just
doesn't have to
talked
be
about
right
that
away.
recently at a different meeting, so I thought,
And Conservation will take first crack at that?
I think they're in a little bit of a transition there. I think their chair is I think the chair is rotating, and I'm not sure. Actually, they might be coming in some of their members are coming in for reappointment, so that can be discussed at that time.
Okay. Is Amos, he's still the chair?
No,
I don't believe he is.
Oh. Who's the chair?
It might be Linda Radmer.
it is.
Okay.
And that's what's going to be transitioning, or that
Well,
is the
both
transition?
Linda and Amos are up for reappointment, as well as a third member, I think.
And will we need that management plan as we go forward, if we need parking in places? Does that have anything to do with it?
Well, it's really specific to the Burns property, and Vermont Land Trust hasn't been pressuring us to come up with it. I mean, initially, we're supposed to come up with it within a year, and they haven't really said anything, but I just thought it should be on the radar.
Sounds like a December item.
Yeah, later in the year.
Okay, let's, I guess, keep it on the radar.
Okay.
And we can maybe ask the appointees if
Yeah.
it's something that they want to pick up.
Right.
And we were working on driveway standards last year. Whatever happened, we
Right.
didn't adopt them, we didn't go over them, they just told us
Right.
what they wanted.
Fire and rescue. And,
Talked about it.
Yep.
But we haven't followed through on that.
That probably is a good thing to put on the
Mm-hmm.
summer schedule.
June looks pretty, no, I don't know. Right, don't we have to do that? We didn't adopt them, or do we need to? I just know we talked about it
should.
once, but,
probably talk to the planning committee about not only that, but the new road standards, which supposed to only apply to municipal roads, although it's to comply with the, what is that, Act 163 is the lake one? I got the numbers mixed up.
Yeah, I forget the
probably.
act number.
Anyway, we have to do new things with our roads to keep the water quality up, but for some reason, private roads are exempt, which doesn't make any sense to me. So I think private roads and driveways and fire department rules could probably all get rolled into one comprehensive, starting with the curb cut permit. I mean, there's half a dozen things that should probably be the organized and concise as opposed to random, you gotta do this, and well, we don't count that, but you should do this, kind of thing.
For the applications.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so when someone knows that, yeah, so many feet, I gotta have a fire pond, it's gotta be this wide, has to support this much weight, has to slope like this, if the sides are certain grade, I mean, the road standard should apply, and all kinds of things, so.
Yeah, I think our current standards don't have anything about fabric or, yeah, they're pretty old.
They're kind of wish standards, along with working in the town right away.
Well, that's why they came to us. They were hoping that they'd be able to get their trucks and ambulances up the newer driveways.
Right.
The older driveways don't have the turnouts that they want, and so,
Well, yeah,
and they
that's-
gave us a pretty good, presentation and discussion on that, but
That's
We
just,
need to finish.
that's just one factor. What I was kind of saying is they all should be piled in there, so
now that makes even better.
the drainage is silt-free and all that other stuff.
August, September?
Sometime before the budget process, I'll get at least one price on painting the bridge beams. The state has recommended we paint the beams. It's not a high priority thing, but it's not like they gotta paint them or they're gonna fall apart. It's like, you should probably paint them, and it's like, well, yeah, okay.
They're gonna do that.
We'll get a price. Yeah, I'll just talk to one person to get us a ballpark, and then we can,
Is this with some type of sealer or,
I think there's probably a couple different choices. They, state bridge inspectors just said to paint beams. So,
And how often do you have to paint beams?
that's a loaded question, too.
I forgot to ask.
Depends on the steel that they're made out of.
Oh. 10 years from now.
Sometimes never.
So you know how we were doing 2 discussions about the budget? I think that was my idea, to have them come in and we could talk and get an idea what they wanted. And then they would come back a second time after everything, and we would be prepared. And I don't know that that's working really that well, is it? It seems like most of those we could get done in one time, or do you like it still?
I think we encouraged that when we were stressing a zero-based budget.
Right. Yeah,
And I think once people get the hang of what we want, we don't really need the 2 meetings.
okay, yeah.
we could maybe make that decision committee by committee? If it seems like
Yeah.
there's more,
Yeah.
like, work to be done on a budget proposal the first time, we could invite them back to sharpen pencils.
Yeah.
I have liked that there's 2 opportunities for committee members and community members to weigh in on any committee's budget. And I meant to bring the numbers, but this year, we were one of the lowest budget increases in the county from a Free Press article. It was, 1.6%. I think a lot of that has to do with really looking at it twice.
Twice, okay.
And we certainly cut quite a bit the second time around.
Well, I think the zero-based really helps because, what the federal government just spent $2.5 million on lobster or something? Because they needed to spend it before their money was up. That's what we want to avoid, is spending just to spend it.
Right, have people budgeting for what they
Something
want to
they
get
really
done.
want to do, and if they
Yep.
really want to do it, it's there, and if they don't feel the need to spend something just to keep your budget up.
Right. Okay, that sounds good. We can pencil in some of that. 7 o'clock. Is there public comment? Bill?
First of all, I just wanted to welcome Louise to the board.
Thank you.
Congratulations to both you and Frank in your reelection.
Thank you.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about town meeting. I talked to Mary Mead at the polls about attendance at town meeting. I know I couldn't make the Tuesday morning meeting, and a lot of people can't. All of the neighboring towns around us do it Monday night now. Heinsberg, Shelburne, Virginia, they're all doing Monday night. And I was wondering what's involved in maybe getting us to change that. Mary told me that, I could collect 5% of the voters in a petition to do it myself, but I was wondering if there's any other way to do it, through the select board. She also mentioned that not only was attendance light, but it's not really an accurate cross-representation of our population, because a lot of people can't make it on Tuesday night. So I just want to put that out there and see if there's any way we can maybe switch it over to Monday night.
Dean?
I think that's a really important point to actually add to the work plan. Just discussion of whether, the experiment with town meeting, the two-step process, whether you want to let it sunset or substitute it with something else.
The charter,
The charter.
yes. Bill, to your point, there are also towns that have moved town meeting to Saturday, which is another option. After 2 years, kind of 3 years, because we honored what wasn't yet a charter in that first year, I've seen both attendance at town meeting wane and the voter turnout on the month after to approve the budget has been going down also. So I think the experiment, the data is showing that it was kind of a good idea of blending a lot of goals, but it just hasn't panned out. So then I'm thinking like you of, well, what's the next thing we can think of to really re-energize and get more people in this really special democratic process? I think it'd be great if we get that on future agendas. When I was a kid, there was babysitting in the library. Of course, the district was off. It was February break, started up again the day after town meeting. And so we've lost some support in, institutional support in that now school vacation is Saturday to Saturday. And so teachers are teaching, the school is full. But it used to be the town school and the cafeteria served lunch. It was a real community day in the building. So it'd be good to have that discussion. As far as what does it take mechanically, do you know? Dean, if...
It would be either a petition by the public, or if the select board wanted to put it on, it would be an article.
Doesn't take any state approval to change the day?
I am not sure whether it needs a charter change. There
must be towns without a charter that have moved.
They have that, yeah. I think you are allowed to move it to a Saturday or possibly to a Monday night without a charter.
Great.
We already have a charter, at least for another year, so we'd probably have to stick with the date at least till our charter disappears, if it does, and then.
Yeah, I think the process of removing the charter early is going to take just as long as letting it sunset.
I think you're right.
If I remember the hearing schedules correctly.
Yeah.
But that would coincide nicely.
Yeah, it would be for 2020, I think.
Mm-hmm.
No,
For 2021.
2021.
Right. We have one more with the charter.
Yeah, there's one more.
Right.
Yeah, so let's have that on the work plan too. Maybe June would be a good time.
Okay.
What about a nominal percentage off property taxes for showing up? I know in Australia, if you don't vote, you get fined on your income tax, but that doesn't seem to fly in America, so. It'd be incentive-based.
Everyone else, voter turnout compared to previous years, it previous.
Unfortunately, we didn't have a roll call to know, there's no division of the House to count exactly how many people were there. I was estimating there was a little over 100 at the time
this
of the
year?
vote.
Oh, yeah.
100, 120 right off the bat.
114, I think, was the top. I personally I figured out about 3 people under the age of 45, besides that was sitting in the audience. So we've got to do something about that. We really should go back to having lunch, or at least, a stand-up little buffet.
Free beer. I watch some baseball games.
Any other public comment? Thank you, Bill. Select board updates?
Library's having a meeting Tuesday with the board and the architect and trying to kind of reorganize into a strategy, change now that it's, that the bond's passed. And
When's the meeting?
1 o'clock.
Day 1,
1 o'clock,
I think it's a conference call.
Oh, well, that's a different thing.
different thing.
That's,
This is Tuesday, the 19th. No, wait a minute. Yes, Tuesday, the 19th. A week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
At 11 a.m. And I'm still, as far as I know, gonna represent the select board and the town, and anything they want to do, I'll certainly come back and let you know, because I'm sure there'll be some of that discussion about what if, and we don't have money, and who spends first, and
Who's on?
who's contracting with who.
All those are being asked.
The last email seemed to think, the architect seemed to think he was contracting with a library board, so we'll, I'll keep you posted.
Any other updates?
I don't think I do. Tomorrow's my first senior center meeting.
Have fun? Is there food?
I don't know. I didn't ask that though, but 9 a.m. should be breakfast.
Let's see, the 710, request for bids for removal of ash trees in the town highway rights of way to prepare for Emerald Ash Board. Hey, Mark. Yeah.
Yes, you may not. Mark Dellenbeck, the tree warden.
I was listening to you with rapt attention.
Oh.
at
I'm flattered.
No, my only problem is I don't know how to ID an ash tree.
I can
So I've been
help.
online looking at that.
I can help you with that, yeah.
I'm afraid I have some.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
We'll find out.
So I wanted to talk to you about the RFP. A while back, the select board had invited me to come back with a proposal for doing preemptive cutting of ash wood along the town right-of-way. And so we have a draft RFP up for consideration. The cutting area would be on Lake Road between Thompson's Point Road and Ferry Road. We chose that because of the very high concentration of ash trees. We thought it'd be a good test case. There are two, we're requesting contractors to submit 2 things. One is the cost of cutting all of the marked ash trees along Lake Road in that section. And the other one is, well, how far can we get with $10,000? Because we know that $10,000 isn't going to cover cutting the entire stretch of road. So that's the way we structured it. And let's see, I think it's been circulated, so hopefully you've had a chance to read what we put down there.
I had a couple questions.
Yeah, please.
So we don't know whether these trees are infested or not, but based on your excellent presentation, it's we need to be proactive. And I assume also from the wanting to cut them down, that the expense of trying to save them by injecting them is not a viable option.
It's not feasible for the entire population of roadside ash trees, but I'm hoping that some private landowners will adopt trees and decide to treat them on their own. There might be some choice trees, like in front of people's driveways.
Sure.
Places like that, that they would want to keep. And so that's an option. It's one of the things I want to bring out in the hearing that we're having next Monday, assuming that you guys authorize us to go ahead with this.
And my second question was, based on your presentation, one of the carriers of the larvae is firewood. So, are you gonna chip? We're gonna chip everything?
No, we're going to chip just the tree tops is the idea,
Okay.
and then the logs that are going to be made available to the landowners.
Okay.
So that the wood belongs to the landowners,
Sure.
and they have first dibs on it. And so we're going to, the plan or the proposal calls for the trees to be bucked up into log sections and left by the side of the road, out of the road, and hopefully behind the right-of-way if there's enough space to do that.
But
And-
if they're infested, it wouldn't, I know nothing on this, but if they are infested, you wouldn't just want to leave them there, right? You'd want to.
Right. That's a good point, yeah. So if they're infested, at that point, we would maybe change our tactics and have the trees chipped instead of left as logs.
Currently, the town is in a pre-infestation
Right,
state
right,
until
right.
it's found.
Right.
Yeah.
And if landowners don't want it, is the plan to pull the trees off of the side of the road, or it would just stay there to?
Yeah, so if the landowners don't want the trees, then they could be available to firewood collectors. We have a lot of people in town who collect firewood. There are people with modest means, or people just like to collect firewood. And so the wood would be available to them. They would have to, technically, they'd have to ask permission from the landowner. And then if the wood is left for a period of time by the side of the road, then Junior would come and remove it. That was what we had talked about. And then the wood would be deposited at a storage site, and we were thinking the site of the old flea market on Route 7 would be an appropriate site. So that's another element of the proposal that needs to be considered and approved by the Select Board.
Junior, did you weigh in on the stump height? 6
I'd like to
inches?
see them as low as possible, of course, just for mowing over. I said like 6 inches or under, preferably as close to the ground as you can get them.
The note says up to a foot where the car's not gonna hit them.
It should be 6 inches.
Should be just all 6 inches, I would think.
Yeah, 6 inches perhaps.
Otherwise,
Basically, I'd like to keep them low like that, so if a car goes off the road, it might destroy the bottom of the car, but it doesn't make that abrupt stop if they run into one that's a foot high or something.
even if they're not going off the road, if it's a place you gotta mow,
Well, yeah, it's hard to mow when you're trying to mow over stumps that are a foot high.
We can put it, I guess my thinking with that was that if the stumps are out of the way of where a car might hit it, like on a berm or something like that, then we could, make it easier for the tree companies, and let them cut higher, but, because it's a little hard to cut that low. But,
Well, once they cut it up a little higher and then cut it a second time,
yeah,
that's,
it's not terribly hard. We'll change that
oh
element.
yeah, it has
I'd
to for
stick
sure.
Because I hadn't thought about the mowing aspect of it too. It's like makes it easier.
you don't wanna give them the responsibility of determining, is this need to be 6, just make them all 6.
Yeah, I think I'd say all of them 6 inches or less.
Or less, right?
That's what it says here.
That's what it says here.
No,
Anyway.
with an emphasis.
So just make them all
So
6
just scratch
inches.
that last part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably just take out that last line.
So I just have a question. This is starting at the intersection of Lake Road Extension and Lake Road and Thompson's Point,
Lake Road and Thompson's Point.
and it's running north.
It's running north, yeah.
And then to Ferry Road intersection?
Right.
Okay.
Were these trees planted by the town, or
They're-
they're just kind of native?
They're just native, they just volunteered. So one of the aspects of this proposal is that we're trying to preserve the natural regeneration. So we're asking the contractors to be careful about that and not damage the saplings that are there, smaller trees, because they'll be the, take the place of the ash trees that are removed.
I didn't read, is there going to be a site visit available for bidders?
I hadn't anticipated that, but
Okay.
maybe that's probably a good idea.
I think-
There's usually a site visit.
A lot of times there are, and it gives us the opportunity to give that type of input, kind of the expectation side, and then they can ask questions.
Yeah, okay. There's some urgency because we were hoping to get the proposals out and the cutting done before the trees leaf out. It's a little more difficult to cut the trees down when they leaf out.
Yeah, I think April 8th is, that's a good timeline. Typically, we open a bid and select at the following meeting, but if people are comfortable with the format, there's not a lot of moving parts here, we could select on the same day? What are your
I
thoughts?
think you get, once you see what you get for bids, if people follow the instructions and they're easy to compare, we could do it on the spot if they, some of them go a little
We can
south.
decide whether we need an extra meeting
Yeah,
to
Award.
evaluate.
Okay.
The only other thing I got is, it says logs should be left on site and stacked or placed in an orderly manner outside of the town right of way where practical. The thing with that is you were talking about if they don't get them out of the, if they don't remove them after so long, yeah, how's the landowner supposed to know this?
That they have to remove.
That they have to remove them, if you're having the contractor put them out of the town right of way.
Right.
So for all intents and purposes, why would there have to be a time frame on when they had to be moved?
Because you want to say something about that, Chief?
Well, I think the time needs to be as far as for mowing.
Right, but do you mow outside of the right of way?
I don't really want them outside the right away. 'Cause I think if you
Then,
put
well,
them
that's, and that's what I'm saying, there, according to this, the contractor is supposed to place all the logs outside of the right of way,
yeah, I think
on the
that-
person's property.
I think that would be hard in a lot of places because that Lake Road section that we're talking about, at least the first part of it, it's pretty heavily treed there, so it's gonna be hard to get the pieces out of the right of way. And I think for people to pick them up, other than the landowner that might come in on his field side, would be if they were side of the road. It would be definitely easier for us to pick them up if we need to go back and pick them up. If they're on the other side of the hedgerow. And it's
Right,
gonna
but
cost
that-
more for whoever's gonna do the work to get the logs through the trees onto the other side of the hedgerow.
I don't disagree, but I'm just wondering how the landowner's supposed to know they're supposed to move them.
How many landowners do you think we're talking about? 20 on that stretch?
There are 50 people who received letters, but there aren't that many parcels. It's more like 20 some odd parcels, but there are multiple owners.
Right, but in that letter the letter stated that the trees were gonna be removed.
Right.
Did it say that they had to make sure that anything that's left behind is removed from the town right of way
No.
within a certain amount of time?
Yeah, that would have been a good thing to put in, but no, we haven't done that.
What do you think about doing the opposite of maybe sending a letter saying the town is planning on removing these ash trees unless you want to keep it, let us know? And then if they do nothing, they aren't left with a pile of logs on their property.
Yeah.
If they do want it, then we can, the contractors can then just know this property, that property, and that property, leave it, all the others, bring it to the flea market.
Yeah, it's possible. Like another level of, management. So we're, trying to keep it as simple as possible, because we're doing this mostly with volunteer.
Of not
labor.
moving the trees.
So we'd have to, well, that's a possibility, yeah. Maybe that's the way we should do it. And, so this is, part of this is, it's a trial effort, so, we're trying to,
It's learning.
sort of figure it out as we go. And, that's a good idea for the next letter. Next time we do it, we should put in the letter, an invitation for landowners to, remove the trees so that they can be clear that the wood is theirs to take if they want to, and maybe put a time frame on it.
Right.
Right.
And this might all happen before the first mow? If we award it on the 8th and
Yeah.
they get going right away?
Yeah, it needs to be done this fiscal year. So that would be by July 1. So the trees would be cut before July 1. And we usually start mowing around the 15th of June.
Okay.
Well, that's also the issue with putting them out of the town right of ways if you're plopping them in somebody's hayfield. I think Robert's got some fields down there that probably wouldn't want a surprise log in the side of the field.
Hopefully, it's, a lot of the landowners will welcome it because they'll use the wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Farmers use the chips for a lot of different kinds of purposes.
Phil?
I spoke to a contractor at the flower show about chemically treating the tree. He basically said it's several $100s per tree to chemically treat them. So I'm curious if, that cost is probably below what it would cost to cut down some of these trees. Of course, I'm curious if we have any trees that we might consider of high aesthetic value in the right of way that we might want to save rather than, cut some of those down.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. And there are two things to keep in mind about that is that the treatments have to happen every 2 years. So it's a recurring cost for the life of the tree. And it can, depending on the tree, it can make financial sense to treat rather than remove. Because some large trees in tricky places can be expensive to remove. And we have identified 7 trees in town that we'd like to keep. There are 3, there's one by the senior center, behind the senior center, that's a nice ash tree we'd like to keep. There are 3 at the beach and 3 at the park that we'd like to keep. There are currently none in the right-of-way that we've identified, but they're something to consider. For us, it's like we don't want to have too many trees because we don't want to burden the town with an ongoing perpetual cost of these chemical treatments.
Okay, well, thanks. I think this is great.
Do we have approval to go ahead with these changes and submit the RFP to contractors?
Should we have a motion
Sure.
with
Motion-
amendments?
Motion to approve the RFP for ash tree removal from Lake Road to Ferry Road, on Lake Road, from Thompson's Point Road to Ferry Road, as corrected.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great.
I appreciate your support.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Junior, Susan. 725, request for a permit to conduct spraying in town highway right-of-way. Is that you, Sue?
So this is basically a continuation of what we started last year. It's the same list of sites, but we'll be spraying any re-sprouts to keep it down. I brought the main culprits are knotweed, carries from the underwood.
Yeah.
Yep. The
And-
spring worked so well last year.
Common Reed, which is demonstrated out on the corner of Route 7 and Church Hill, which is not on the list because the state won't let us work in their right foot. And it's just something I'm wondering if the select board at some point would like to send a letter to somebody in the state and say, that is threatening our wetland down here, which is what, about 70 acres or so. It's not ours, but behind the town hall. It's gonna spread, and it's gonna be more expensive. So Junior's been managing wild parsnip by mowing in a timely way. We don't spray that. Just, so you have the list of the sites. Junior hires a certified herbicide person. It's done, it'll be very inexpensive.
Less than $1,000?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Trigger anything with the purchasing policy?
So that has to be signed and sent up to,
The state?
yeah, Dominique.
Looks like there's a spot for one signature. Someone wants to make a motion?
Make a motion for approval of the request for permit conduct right-of-way spraying for 2019 to be signed by the chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have any other glyphosate willies? Any concern about the rodeo's basically glyphosate and that's Roundup and that's being skewered?
Dean has posted a notice to people, and he contacted landowners last year. There were a couple questions.
Well, it's gone into litigation now. All of a sudden, they're litigating people that have been exposed to Roundup are
Oh,
coming up with things.
so we're not talking about a lot of spraying. There'd be a few sprouts, and then there's one site we hadn't treated yet on Orchard Road. You have to have dry weather, you have to have no wind. Our herbicide person has to have the timing right to do it, so there's one site we hadn't gotten to, so.
These are all pretty far from most human activity in the rights of way.
Yeah. Some of them, it's just gonna be a few sprouts that we might just take a sponge that has glyphosate or rodeo and just run it up the stem and that's it.
Doesn't bother me. I just thought I should mention it.
Gasoline is a big carcinogen. Also, probably worse than glyphosate. Okay. What's that?
Yeah, no more discussion?
Just
Nope.
quickly, Sue, does the Nature Conservancy, which put these out, do they recommend this glyphosate treatment?
Oh, yeah, I volunteer for them.
Good.
We work down at Williams Woods
Yep.
twice a year. We use, glyphosate, custom treatment on woody things like buckthorn, honeysuckle. We don't use spraying, but we use glyphosate.
Okay, and so the Conservancy supports this use. Great.
Okay, I guess all those in favor
Thank you.
indicate
So you want these back?
by saying aye.
Hi.
Well, no,
I don't know.
Oh, Louise?
well, I'm sorry. Just laughing with Sue, sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 5.
No, authorize the chair to sign.
He did.
Okay.
Um, 7:35, Clark Hinsdale III, proposed open space agreement and trail easement on parcel north of Charlotte Solar Installation, northwest of the intersection of Heinsberg Road and Spear Street.
This has been turned in to Dean. And there were some emails around about it today, about the issue of whether that was the right procedure or not.
I can give a brief overview.
Sure.
So Clark owned 2 adjacent properties on Heinsberg Road, right, just west of the corner with Spear Street. One property is the property that surrounds the solar facility, and then the other property is the adjacent property to the west. And he did a boundary adjustment between the 2 properties, and the Planning Commission approved that with a condition that an open space agreement be applied to, actually, and they were thinking potentially all of lots 2A, 1, and 3, which is basically the northern half of the combined properties. Vermont Land Trust already has an easement on lots 1 and 3. So the town open space agreement would only be on lot 2A. And that is currently all wooded, but, so anyway, that's what the item is in front of you. Additionally, in that process, Clark offered a trail easement to connect the existing trail easement that runs through Lot 1 and the northern portion of the adjacent lot to the south. So he has been in touch with the Trails Committee, and they have come up with, I think, a plan that they're both they both are in agreement with. The initial thought was to have the trail easement come in off of Spear Street near the town cemetery. The town, or rather, Clark has an easement to come in from Spear Street, but there's a legal issue as far as being able to convey an easement if you don't actually own the land. So he is not able to actually convey the easement over the portion that he has an easement to. He can convey an easement on Lot 2A, and then he's willing to also go down to bring the easement down to Heinsberg Road in the event that we can't get an easement from the landowner out to Spear Street. So those are the big issues: the open space agreement on Lot 2A and the trail easement.
Has the Planning Commission and the Conservation Commission looked at this?
I know the Planning Commission has a condition in the boundary adjustment approval that says that the Planning Commission must approve the open space agreement, and I don't believe they have. That was something where inadvertently we went to the Select Board, which is the normal process, but the Planning Commission, I think, may want to have a look at that. But I don't think it prevents the Select Board from potentially conditionally approving it. And if the Planning Commission does change it, then come back to the Select Board with any changes.
Usually the Planning Commission and the Conservation Commission meet in order to look at the open space agreements.
Normally, the Planning Commission does have that in, they usually develop the open space agreement in the process of approving an application.
Right.
I don't know to what extent the Conservation Commission has been involved with this process throughout.
Okay.
Clark?
I'd like to add and explain what's very an unusual situation. This is not a situation where anybody is trying to go around the planning commission. The issue is that the land around the solar array was subject to legal action and a settlement. And Dean took the lead on the settlement for the town, and in that settlement, just go down the other way. Here, thank you. This is the rectangle where the solar array is. And it's not where I wanted it exactly. I don't think it's exactly where anybody wanted it. It's where that after everybody pushed in different directions, the Public Service Board decided it was to be. Anyway, and so in order to create the lot, which is simply the fence around the solar array, it created a U-shaped parcel out of the lot, out of the bigger lot. The Planning Commission decided that that was a unusual shaped lot, and so they turned the subdivision down. My observation is they primarily turned the subdivision down because they were upset because towns didn't have any jurisdiction over solar arrays. So they couldn't turn the solar array down, but they could turn the boundary adjustment down that moved the property line. So we went to court. I took the town to court, and after the Planning Commission turned it down, it was reconsidered, they turned it down again, we went to court. Dean handled the negotiations on behalf of the town, and in the settlement of the case, it was agreed that this property, okay, would, as part of a master plan for the whole property, become open space in due time, and that the development rights from this property would be pulled forward onto the remaining property, which is property that was slated in the East Charlotte Village study to be added to village. So when I did this project,
So what was changed when it went to, apparently they went to mediation with Dean?
it was changed, the
Dean
subdivision
went to
wasn't
meet,
changed, it was approved with a series of conditions, one of which this piece of woodland, which is in the town plan as a resource of high public value, would end up being conserved, and any development rights on it would be pulled forward toward the village.
For more density based on the land.
Right. So that was part of 2014,
I was gonna say 13 maybe.
2013, 2014. So when this project came along, which is actually taking bulking up a piece of woodland from smaller to bigger, it has a little bit of an odd shape, but it's because it's where the woods is. The Charlotte Land Trust has an easement on the portion of the woods that's part of this Nordic Holsteins, better known to most of us as the old bean farm. This is the frontage where the buildings are. This is the woods that you see out back, looking north from Heinsberg Road. There's another piece of it over here, and then this forested parcel. Together, the three forested parcels will bulk up to 122 acres. So we're actually doing something that's in the public eye these days, which is, there's been a lot of concern about fractionalization of woodland and making them into parcels that aren't economically big enough to do anything with. So this was bulking one up. It would have been easiest if the Vermont Land Trust would have just added this to their easement. But because of the number of co-holders they have, it would have been an act of Congress, almost literally, because it'd have to be approved by the Ag Department, Forest Parks and Recreation, Housing and Conservation Board, and USDA. Process that usually takes about a year when things go well. So anyway, I want to get back to the Dean part of this, because when this came up, Daryl was relatively new, and because Dean is in the next office with several hundred hours of experience in the project, shall we say. As I worked on this project, I wrote to both of them. I generally copied both of them on the correspondence. Because Daryl was kind of pushing about, well, Dean was all involved with this in the back, and Dean really needs to, Dean really needs to do this because he's the guy that knows all the details about it. So Dean can speak for himself, but it always felt to me like Daryl was really basically saying, Dean, you need to take care of this. Nonetheless, we kept copying Dean and Daryl. Well, I did, my lawyer did, others did, as the process went along. The other thing that we did is essentially the conservation, the document that you have does more than just say the land will be open space. It basically imposes the conditions of managing a clay plain forest that were put in the original bean farm easement because the Conservation Commission had viewed clay plain forest as a target public resource of high public value, and blocking up more clay plain forest is important to them. Now, as a result, the easement says it has to be maintained as a forest. It cannot be cleared for agricultural land. And the young farmer who's buying the bean farm, who happens to be here, Steve, raise your hand.
How's it going? Steve Schubart.
Steve is a grass-based beef farmer and is buying his first farm here in Shalat
Yeah, Clark, if I may, just introduce myself a little more.
Sure.
Yeah, I started my business on leased land down in Shoreham, Vermont. I'm a graduate of Vermont Tech. My dad lives in Heinsberg. I also went to CBU for a spell. And I work with local farmers to buy their beef, and I finish it and aggregate it and sell it to wholesalers. So trying to basically take some of the market that we have in Boston and New York and funnel some of that money back to the small scale beef farmers here in Vermont and throughout the Northeast. And I also am really excited to be moving into Charlotte. So thank you.
So a lot of us have been working very, very hard on what's going to replace dairy in Shalat. I've been very involved with that, and this is part of the plan. We do grow good forage on our clay lands here in Shalat. So anyway, Steve didn't want to buy the land that was conserved to be forest land because he can't clear it for grassland. And so we kind of created this parcel out of 3 parcels that would be 122 acres. And it does have the stricter requirements that it be managed as forest land and that it cannot be cleared for agriculture. So anyway, I just want you to understand that there was no effort to go around the Planning Commission here and no effort to keep it away from the Planning Commission. I just kept Daryl and Dean in the loop all the way through the process. So I'm glad to have the Planning Commission look at it. We're proud of the document. We're donating the trail easement as well, working with the Trails Committee. And this process has really been one on these conservation projects of working with the Shalat Land Trust and the Trails Committee, et cetera, on trying to get a quality outcome for the community. So we are very badly wanting to close before April 1 because that's the tax date and the current use date. We have to switch everything around for current use, and we want to do it this year. I don't see any reason why it would need to go back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing because they've already had the public hearing, they've closed the public hearing, they wrote a decision, and the implementation of the decision is an administrative process. It's the Mylar and all the details on the Mylar and the open space agreement and so on and so forth in order to administratively perfect the permit so that the documents can be recorded in the land records and the permit can be perfected so that the property is saleable.
Who would, this allows, as it should, for a managed forest plan. And who would approve that plan?
Well, I think the language says that the town is one of the parties that gets to approve the plan. And that's often not the case. The town often doesn't get involved in that.
Well, I mean, this, as I read this, and I could, correct me if I'm wrong, it appropriately calls for forest management, including whatever, including logging, but whatever needs to be done to maintain a healthy forest. But it also references a plan, and I'm just curious how that plan is approved.
There is a plan already for 89 or so acres, which is the Lot 3, Lot 1 area. Those aren't separate lots, they're just parcels. So that's a Vermont Land Trust plan. I do have a forester. That plan has been put in place and reviewed and approved. And the plan is to extend the plan to the additional acreage.
So there is language in section 3, sub C4, it's on page 6, so it's Roman numeral 4. Says approval of the forest management plan submitted to grantee, which is the town, for approval shall not be unreasonably withheld or conditioned if such plan is consistent with the purposes of this agreement and such plans have been approved by a professional forester acceptable to the municipality.
When we did the conservation easement on the bean farm in 2011, not only was the Charlotte Land Trust actively involved, so was the Conservation Commission. And hence, I guess you'd say the extra level of, I don't know if you want to call it extra level of scrutiny or extra level of review was put in place precisely to avoid it being converted into agricultural land. Because not only is it plain forest, but if you notice the map of the brook going through, there's a ton of riparian area here, and as a water quality measure, a lot of the land is very low, very flat, very heavy, and it's considered to be best practices for water quality to have that area that the brook runs right through the middle of forested as opposed to grazed.
So I'm looking at the finding of facts that says, prior to submission of the Mylar to the planning commission, the applicant shall blah, 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 blah. In a form acceptable to the town attorney and the planning commission. So the town attorney has looked at this, Dean, but the planning commission has not.
Correct, as a body.
As they weighed in on it, it being on tonight's agenda, said anything about?
Some of them, well, actually, I think one is here. I haven't, some indicated they would come, but I don't, I mean, they haven't acted on it as a body.
When is their next scheduled meeting?
On the 21st, I believe.
It's cutting it close. Gerald, do you know if it'd be on the agenda for the 21st?
It's not on the agenda to the best of my knowledge.
I make a motion to approve it on condition that planning commission approves.
Okay, there's a motion.
Oh, no, I was
Was that a
asking,
motion?
may I, should I do that?
Sure. You can.
I assume that the planning commission can call its own meetings,
Right.
a quick meeting or whatever.
And there's even time for them to add it to the agenda on the
Okay.
21st before it needs to be warned. So is that a motion?
Yes.
A motion, there's a motion to approve the open space agreement conditional upon the planning commission's approval.
This is their agenda.
A note, the same document I just read from was signed by the planning commission on January 17th. So, for what it's worth,
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Bill?
I just wanted to chime in on this, there's been, Dean, can you look at this just a little bit, please?
That way or that way?
That's perfect, just down there. We live here, I just want to let you know where we are, we have this little lot right here. It's been really hard to figure out what's been going on here, this has been a process, I'm sure you all know. This is also tied into the new village, East Charlotte Village boundary discussion that's been happening. In fact, it's going to be talked about again on the 21st at the Planning Commission meeting. There are competing proposals where to make the East Charlotte Village boundary. So I just want to first stress that that boundary hasn't been decided yet where the village is going to be. So if you're talking about building on this parcel and transferring units here, that's still in a state of flux. I wanted to mention that 2010 East Charlotte Village study, and everybody keeps calling it a study. That was not a study. That was a stakeholder charrette in which people put push pins on a map. Now, if you look at that study, and I'm going to call it that because that's what some people always refer to it as, it put push pins and housing units on conserved land, on wetlands. It didn't talk about soil types, it didn't talk about runoff, it didn't talk about water quality. So it really wasn't a study at all. It was
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, relevance. And I'm perfectly glad to have anybody talk about the open space agreement.
Yeah,
But I don't see this as a forum for the future of East Charlotte.
I gotta agree with Clark. This is the result of court findings. We're just following along with that.
Bill, could you keep the discussion to the open space agreement?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm just saying that there's a lot more to this. And so the open space agreement, my question for Dean is whether or not this agreement will allow the transfer of more development rights to these parcels here, which back up to Sheehan Green. And that's one thing that we've not been able to determine ourselves. So that's a question that I have for Dean.
I don't think the open space agreement itself does that. The planning commission decision for the boundary adjustment may do that. I don't think it's a given, but it allows for it. So the open space agreement, I think, is quiet on that issue. It's the boundary adjustment spoke to it, and that's already a done deal. The planning commission approved it. So the open space agreement merely says Lot 2A will not be developed, and it has a management, some management restrictions on it.
State your name.
Yeah, I'm Tom Baginski. I also live in Sheehan Green. I live on the north side of Sheehan Green. I guess my question, or what I want to talk to specifically about this, is the easements for the trails. And I know Clark had, we had just talked about there's two options, one going straight towards Heinsberg Road.
We did it your way, Tom.
Tom,
I was just,
yeah.
Tom, could we have a trail easement deed to be a second order of business?
Oh, okay. I thought that
Maybe
was
we
part
could
of this. Oh,
press pause and pick that up in a second. Any more discussion on?
Well, my overriding concern is the view that we've not undercut the planning commission, because I'm so new here. You are going to have to. You all comfortable that we're not going to undercut them?
We generally don't, and I think with the caveat that it receives planning commission approval, I think we're achieving that here, and still expediting the process with, appropriately.
If I could just add, a lot of times the way the planning commission handles review and open space agreement is the same way they handle review of draft decisions, which is circulating it around by email and getting comments. So it's not something that generally requires a warrant hearing, although if they circulate it, they may actually bless it or not bless it on the 21st, because it'll all be together. but it's, you know, the warrant hearings have already taken place, and
I'll
this
leave
is
it up to the
administrative.
planning commission on whether they wanna go through and have an unofficial meeting, or whether they wanna try to make a decision on their own
Yeah.
through,
And
outside of a meeting.
I think this motion does that,
Yeah.
achieves that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the open space agreement with the condition of being approved by the planning commission? Indicate by saying aye.
And authorize the chair to sign.
Is that in there?
Authorize the chair to sign.
Yeah, it was in there. Yeah. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, is there a motion so we can take up discussion of the trail easement deed?
Make a motion to approve the trail easement deed for, is this lot, is this the same one, lot 2A?
It is partial, it is. over
Partial
2A, but
from-
it's
from
also over 2B.
Lot 2A
is it
going
on the-
to Heinsberg Road?
Yeah, I guess, could you explain the route?
Well, let's
Oh,
get a
sorry.
second,
Sorry.
and then discussion.
Second.
A lot of discussion's been going on. Sheehan Green has met with the trail committee. Trail committee has been following this. The easement that goes out to Spear Street is here, and the issue is, as you heard, whether or not it's even conveyable. So I offered to have a different, give a different way out. This would be along the hedge road that separates the conserved bean farm from the solar array and the land that's around it. And then this connector gets to either side of my property for the ability to connect other places in the future. I mean, it could be, for example, if there was development on this property, that the trail committee could decide to ask for a, you know, trail easement any number of places. But the idea here was to get from point to point to point, so I was giving the trail committee the maximum opportunity for the future. Also, I did this little piece right here, Steve, so because this is all in rotational grazing, and this is wood, so I just thought we could tuck the trail on that side and it wouldn't have to go through the corner of your pasture. But then on this side, there's an old farm road here, so it makes sense for it to be on this side rather than on that side. So it's been ground truthed, and it's a reasonable place, and it may well cause a connection to Spear Street never to happen.
I guess my question on that,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Please.
my question on that was just going, the way Clark has drawn it into Heinsberg Road, you know, just driving here tonight, I stopped and I looked, you know, and the view east and west on Heinsberg Road is easier, in my opinion, just for people coming out, compared to the cemetery road that comes out on Spear Street, north and south. And so it might be a future thing. I guess I'm just wondering, it just seems like there's less view, especially if you're coming south on Spear Street, because people love to go pretty fast, if you're coming out of that cemetery road. So I guess I just had a question of why, you know, the possibility of both options, when I personally think the Heinsberg one seems to make more sense. So I was just questioning it, just wondering.
Lori's here from the Trails Committee. Would you like to speak on that issue?
Yes, thank you. The reason that we did want to keep that east-west connection and get out to Spear Street is that we did look at the sight lines on both Heinsberg Road and on Spear Street. And actually, if you look on Spear Street as you're coming south, you press the hill ahead of time, but then you can see all the way down to the intersection of Spear and Heinsberg Road. So the sight lines are actually very good when you come out by the cemetery, because you're quite a ways down that hill. On Heinsberg Road, going east, you have to really go up that hill and then back down into the intersection with the blinking light. And the sightlines there are not, you don't have as much advanced vision as you do on Spear Street. So certainly our preferred alignment would be to go out to Spear Street just for safety purposes. But if that cannot happen, which we don't know whether or not that can, then the other easement out to Heinsberg Road would have to be the safe second choice if we have to go that way.
I would think, myself personally, driving that road for 25 years, I would think that the Heinsberg, that's a very practical easement. It doesn't bother neighbors right now, Vicky. You know, that's a good spot for it, as far as I'm
Well,
concerned.
I don't think the question is whether the views, the distance from where the trail ends up on Heinsberg Road is bad. I think what we're
that's
getting
great.
at is if somebody comes off that trail to go into East Shalott, to go up over the hill where it's narrow.
But that's still practical, do it there.
Next time you need some snow, you can have Junior blast some of that ledge out.
Are
Then
there,
you'll be able to see just fine.
are there any trail easements on the south side of Heinsberg Road that we know of?
Yeah.
No,
No.
on Heinsberg Road, no, there are.
Are there any easements on any three sides that this connects to, or is this just kind of a future, this is where we want to put it trail?
There is a connection you can see on lot, what is that, lot
One?
one?
Yeah.
There is an easement, that dotted line is an easement that then connects to another easement to the, what would that be, northwest on another piece of property. So it is creating a connection, and the thought would be that that would be a way to get into the center of East Charlotte Village. That's really the reason
Okay.
to get out to one of the roads.
And the easement it's in two parts. It's the permanent easement of 20 feet and then a short-term additional
Construction
temporary
easement,
construction
use
easement.
more
Okay,
room while you're doing it.
got it.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the most important question of the evening here, which is, it says no motorized traffic, but then it goes on to include in that definition trail bikes. I mean,
I'm going to refer you to the
it's just,
co-chair of the trail committee.
this is such a nitpick, but it may be important at some point in the future. It says no motorized traffic, including motorcycles, trail bikes, and snowmobiles. Aren't trail bikes?
Like a dirt bike? Yeah, it's motorcycle. What do you call those? They're motorized vehicles.
Okay, so if I just have
Dirt
a,
bike? Motocross?
Dirt bike?
Dirt bike.
Dirt bike, is it a dirt bike? Is that what they're
But
called?
the intent is not to prevent electric assist bicycles from
Exactly.
using the trail?
Right.
And I think there's a difference between somebody thinking a trail bike might being a cross-country bicycle.
that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, this is just some clarity.
Well, I appreciate it. So maybe that should be changed to,
Dirt bike?
Well, I would just take it out, because then you eliminate all motorcycles, all
motorcycles.
motorized.
You already
bikes.
have motorcycles in
Or
there.
on-road
That should
motorcycle.
cover.
so you think motorcycle would cover both?
Yeah,
Yes.
say on-road, off-road motorcycle
Yeah.
if you need
You're
it.
right, because there is a lot more dirt biking, but they are not motorized.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And are dogs allowed on these trails? On leashes?
On leash.
Good.
Yes?
I'd like to say one more thing about it. Like, I'll go and I'll look at it again, but I find it hard to believe that you're telling me that the site of view is easier and better on east to west Heinsberg than Spear Street. And I know you can, once you crest that hill, I know you can see all the way down to the light. But Mr. Carpenter's property right there with his trees and everything else growing out, I don't see that as a cleaner view of people stepping out of the woods onto the road than Charlotte Heinsberg Road here, which has farmland on both sides, including the solar array. Like, I don't know, I understand if you went and you looked at it and you think that Spear Street's a clearer view, but I just don't see it.
You want the trail to go behind your house?
I don't personally want the trail to go behind my house, but it's not my property to make that decision. I'm just here to share that once people do, because I like trails, I use trails myself, I hike with my dog and my kids. But I just feel like I've walked up that road from the cemetery onto Spear Street, and I personally have just found it somewhat dangerous. I walk over to your store, I walk over to the church, I walk this intersection a lot of times. I see the speeders, everyone speeds, no matter which way you're going. But it's just my question and my personal preference that I think it makes more sense going to Charlotte-Heinsberg. Thank you.
I want to echo what Tom is saying. You know, I've had this discussion with Lori, and I consider Spear Street extremely dangerous. We won't walk on it. The traffic and the speeders, and there's no way to really slow it down because it's a long downhill stretch. It's just very, very dangerous. There's also huge drop-offs on both sides of the road. There's houses close to the road. There's no way to put a path along Spear, so you're forcing people right on to the road itself, which is really unsafe. And the other thing I wanted to mention is if you can cross Charlotte-Heinsberg Road here, if you can get this one on the other side, you can come up right behind the Grange Hall, which would be so perfect. There's plenty of parking there at the Grange and at the church for people to access the trail. And that would really be the ideal scenario to me.
I mean, I would agree with that if there was an easement on the other side of the road, but there isn't an easement.
Someday, maybe.
But,
I appreciate your comments, certainly take them in advisement. I don't think there's any immediate construction plans for any of this, but it is a long-term discussion. If there's no more discussion about this particular trail easement.
I just want to ask for clarification. Is the north-south on Lot 2B? I mean, this portion is Lot 2A and then it's Lot 2B?
Yes.
Okay. And this is a little bit on Lot 1? Just
I
that.
think the trail easement there is illustrative because it's a floating trail easement, so
And then just meet at the corner?
it just meets at the corner.
Okay.
Yes.
Dean, in the middle of the trail easement deed document, there are some blanks to be filled in.
Yes.
Is that what you're asking clarification for? Or should we do that now before we approve this?
Well, I think it can refer to the sketch and, and the sketch is
Yeah.
Okay.
now
I think we'll refer
clarified.
to the potential trail easement 3.7.19.
Who made the motion? You did?
I did.
You did?
So
It's a friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment myself.
Does that include the elimination of the term trail bikes? Is that okay?
As amended.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Does this need to be signed by the chair?
It looks like one signature.
Yep.
If no more discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes. The 8 o'clock item was, thank you, was rescheduled until Jim comes back. We did that at the beginning of the meeting. And we're on to the 8:15 Select Board Rules of Procedure approval.
So you made some changes at the last meeting. I think you actually had a motion to approve it, but I incorporated the changes and it needs to be signed, so.
It looks good. Oh, so we already voted on it.
In the minutes, I think
we did.
indicate you
Yeah, I
did.
think it was voted with changes.
Well, I'll pass around this copy, and if someone slips on their signature, we can pass around a different one. I didn't give you power of attorney, did I?
Power the pen.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm good back.
Oh, yeah.
But this is my
Not
stuff.
this one? Just wait for one more and get a motion. Need a motion to, do we adjourn or we just suspend as the select board and reconvene as the liquor control? Is there such a motion?
It sounds like a good one. I'll make it.
Is there a second?
Something I didn't know.
Is there a second? You're seconding?
Second,
Oh, great.
We're the liquor control board?
We are
Holy Toledo.
for the town.
Yeah.
We're
I
the
didn't
liquor
know until
control
the first
board
time I
and
had
we're
to
the
do it.
health board. Or a few other things, so.
Oh, dear, okay.
So, do I have it, Dean, or do you?
No, you don't.
I still say we should get samples.
Do you, do proprietors recuse themselves on their own?
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, we have to slip out of select board into
Hey,
the
look at
liquor
that, look at that.
control.
Oh, yeah, all those
And
in-
then he's gonna,
yes.
He
oh,
needs to slip
recuse
out
himself.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
Did we vote on that? All those in favor?
No, didn't we?
We had a second. So all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
To reconvene as the
To
liquor control
Oh,
board?
yes, aye.
Convene as the liquor control
Yeah,
board.
okay.
Opposed? Okay. We are now the liquor control board. We have two applications in front of us. The first application is for Tenny Enterprise, a renewal of a second-class license to sell malt and vinous beverages from May 1st, 2019 to April 30, 2020.
Why such a short period?
I think it's
Is that
one
just- is it
one
statutory?
year.
It's the state.
It's the state.
Okay, got it.
Guess I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
All those in favor of approving the motion, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Recusal.
4 yeas and 1 abstention for recusing.
Yep.
There's a place to sign.
I'll make a motion to renew the second-class license to sell malt and vinous beverages for Spears Corner Store, Inc. from May 1st, 2019 to April 3rd, 30th, 2020.
I'll second that.
Check is attached. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This is the Tenny one. Opposed? 4 ayes and 1 recusal.
I'll make a motion to, I guess, adjourn as a liquor board and reconvene as the select board.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Wow, we just cruised through that.
I gotta go to the back down.
Okay, we have some minutes to go through.
The game now, 2, 3.
It's in the phone, in the phone.
Gotta go to Fritz.
Yeah, I was gonna,
I gotta
that's
make sure
for
I know when that
8:50.
is. I misplaced that.
Just Fritz.
Well, you can sign mine too, right? Goes both ways.
There's one from the 25th.
I saw,
Yeah, well, could you pass that to Lynn to Dean?
yes. Where's the other one?
Dean, I think, already has it.
I already has it. Okay,
There's the
great.
second one.
Just give it to me.
Thank you, Lynn. It's not under the job description. So is there a motion to approve the minutes of February 25th?
So moved,
Second.
as amended.
And I can't vote on this.
Correct.
Just so you know. I won't recuse myself, but the vote should say whatever, not vote in or whatever.
Yeah, I wonder what the statute is, if Lane can weigh in on this or not.
We should call right
I don't know
now.
if there's any case law on
Get him
that.
on the phone.
I would assume that you could finish any business
I
that
can
you
send
were,
you
I don't
the
think so.
electronic version.
that you were in office for.
Yeah, well, we could call him.
It's not necessary.
We don't need it.
No, unless there's a 2-2 tie here.
That's right.
Yeah, we just,
That could be fine.
I think they're saying, well, we just can't vote on it.
You know what?
Did you guys, I don't think you voted on it.
Line 38.
No,
Did you vote on it?
No,
We're
we're
in-
in discussion.
Oh,
line,
38. It's Carrera,
oh, yes.
Carrara.
I wasn't here for this week.
Well, down to 3, that's about as
Yeah.
slim as you can get here.
Because all of it's familiar, but I watched it from home. I wasn't able to
So
come
that
to
would be,
this
so that would be a
meeting.
change here.
So yes, it
Yeah,
would.
So line 10.
a select board present
And
would
you
be
weren't either,
changed in
Matt.
line 10.
Were you here?
Yes. Oh,
No, we weren't here.
I was not here. So we need Lane.
No.
But he's not here.
I know, but we don't have a majority to
Isn't
approve
this
the
the
minutes.
quandary?
Isn't it?
I knew it would come up. It's Murphy's Law right here. Want to look into that and we'll postpone
Yeah.
this?
Okay.
Thanks.
And here's the controversy we're talking
Ooh, gonna lose sleep on that one.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing. That's why I was reading. I was like, oh yeah, I remember John Quinney saying that. But
Well, technically, it'll never be answered, I mean, unless
Yeah.
two weren't here, one's gone, and the other two are here, so.
I tend to think you might have to vote to amend the rules to allow the 2 people who were present to
Well, it'd be
approve
the
the minutes.
majority of the people that were present at the time of the meeting.
yeah,
No,
that's
it's a
true.
majority of
But it's
the,
supposed to,
It's-
but
it's
all,
the
but
majority
all,
of
but
the
all
board.
motions.
It
are
usually
supposed to
is, but there's a majority of the board isn't possible because you weren't at the meeting.
Lane was.
But he's not on the board.
Yeah.
That's the question.
That's the question.
I think that
Right.
needs to be answered.
All right.
be, whether he can come, whether he has,
The authority
voting
to approve
to
minutes.
approve the minutes.
I
when
can't
he-
I would,
imagine.
I would think the state does allow that.
Really?
It does allow for a lot of things. It allows members of other boards to come back to, can't finish something that
They
has
started.
come back up.
Yeah, I would think.
It's only for judges, that's the rule.
Good. So Lane might be on the hook to come back next meeting.
Hopefully he's watching.
So the minutes of March 7th were available beforehand. The minutes of March 4th and 5th were provided today, and they're on the table if you want to do speed reading. And they're actually, the minutes of town meeting actually are supposed to be approved within a certain number of days of town meetings, so it's just the motions there. It's not a lot of discussion, so you might be able to get through that.
Okay, should we start, let's start with March 7th.
Sure.
Is there a motion to approve minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes of town meeting, March 7th.
Second.
Who seconded Fritz's motion for chair? Was it you, Carrie?
Yes.
Seconded by Carrie?
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Do we typically do that? I think Kathy would always put who
Right,
seconded
who it
it.
was.
I don't know if that's required or not.
Same thing with the next one, on the top of the page,
Yep,
just says seconded.
on line 48. Memory serves me, was it you, Fritz, or was it?
It was Fritz, yeah.
I think you did second, Fritz,
I think so.
Frank's? Seconded by Frank,
I feel
by
like I
Fritz, for Frank.
Hear it.
Same thing on 70,
Yeah, and,
all of them.
yeah, and I think moving forward, if we can record who seconded, that'd be good.
Yep.
Frank motion to approve.
On 139. I was gonna do the energy committee with you.
Okay. Matt, line 139, Matt and Frank. Add Frank. Well, these are great minutes. Have you done this before?
No. No names.
Motion to adjourn at 6:58. Do we remember? Could go back.
Usually now, yeah, it's right
Probably
on
was,
7
yeah.
o'clock, because the planning commission
Yeah.
meeting started. So
Actually, it
Do
was,
you remember who?
it was usually
Oh, who made the
Frank.
motion?
Usually
Oh, I remember.
For that one.
Fritz and Carrie.
Is line 142, is that correct, the town properties, or, I know Fritz is the main,
Right, but we were gonna go, we were talking about going to site visits and kind of looking at town properties kind of as a group. I think,
But Fritz.
but Fritz was gonna be the main.
Fritz and Carrie is what we have on the newly populated work plan. Is that still?
Sure.
I think that's correct. We both noted on the way out that the.
Is it Fritz and Carrie or Carrie
Carrie
and
did.
Fritz?
Carrie and Fritz.
Okay.
On this case,
I'm on the bottom of the mailbox, sometimes it'll be on the bottom.
Let's take him prime.
he's taking the front line.
Oh, here's her. Oh, okay. Take a gander. Which ones are we doing next?
All those in favor?
Oh, yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye? Opposed?
Nice one.
I don't know, March 4th? I guess pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve the minutes of March 4th as may be amended.
Second.
I think on line 142 where it says, more accurate, that should be followed by for cost estimate, and eliminate the for clerk of the works and project manager.
I had line 24. I think that's the copy of the older article, which is not the one that we approved for town meeting. We struck the tax rate to be set sufficient to pay interest. So the article that was taken up reads, well, it's page 7 of the town report. Shall bonds of the town of Charlotte in an amount not to exceed $700,000 be issued to finance the construction of an addition to the Charlotte Library, ? So everything after that, and the tax rate be set sufficient to pay interest. We edited that out right before the warning was due. And then I guess also on line 74, we'll do the same. No discussion, all those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion for March 5th?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 5th as may be amended.
I'll second that. We have the same comment to the
Yeah.
There.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of March 5th? Say aye.
Mike?
Aye, opposed? One abstention? All right, how we do? 10 minutes early? Conference call with the bond bank. Dean, do you want to bring everyone up to speed?
Yep. So as indicated in the minutes of March 4th, there was discussion at the informational hearing and also at town meeting, questions about how it will work with the two pots of money for the library, and if one pot has to pay before the other, if they both pay at the same time, or how all that will work. So I thought it would be useful to get in touch with the bond bank, because we will need to apply for the bond fairly soon, to just understand how that works. And the select board has to authorize the application for the bond. So the executive director of the bond bank is able to talk on the phone. There is a call-in number if anyone wants to participate. So that's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I guess Mary will be on vacation, and I think, Carrie, you raised the question whether this should wait until she gets back. I guess from my perspective, she can certainly discuss it with the bond bank when she gets back, but I think it's information that the select board should have as soon as possible.
Can we walk back to the timeliness of this? My recollection was we were going to wait for the fundraising effort to reach that $700,000, and we had 15 months to do so before we needed to engage with the bond bank, which brought us to spring of 2020 application for a bond. Because we have until, there's 2 cycles, spring and fall.
Yeah.
And when the library board of trustees came to us, that was the discussion for the select board voting to put the article on the agenda, was that we had this time to wait and see if the fundraising got to the $700,000.
Right, and I don't know where their fundraising is right now. I know in their mind, they felt if there was a positive bond vote, it may breed some additional support financially. And I haven't been in touch with them to know whether that has transpired or not.
So we have 3 windows for executing a bond this spring, this fall, and spring of 2020.
I believe that's
all
right.
under the approval of the voters at town meeting.
Yeah, I don't quite remember whether spring of 2020 is in there, but if that's what.
Yeah, I think it,
Okay.
Mary does a lot of paperwork when she's paying with the bond bank, correct?
She generally
Does it
makes the
build out or what?
payments. The application has been submitted by the town administrator on behalf of the select board.
I just feel that she should be part of it. She's the town treasurer and she should be part of that. Can you
How
wait
long is
1
she-
week?
I was gonna say, how long is she gone?
She's gonna be back next Thursday, so make it for next Friday or something.
That's fine, I'm fine waiting, I just felt the sooner it's possible, the better.
Do you know the details of the timing for the spring bond application?
I believe it's probably in April, is my memory, but I don't recall exactly.
I mean, no matter what, we still have the fall.
Yeah, and I didn't,
So, I mean, things could be done in time for fall application.
yeah, and unless something changed from the board's recollections or yours, Louise, I mean, I pretty vividly remember us sanctioning the article to go before the voters because we had 15 months of fundraising before, you know, if the article passed, before we
Right.
needed to take out a $700,000 loan.
Yeah, I am not, you know, I guess I was anticipating if there is $700,000 raised by the library, but
There's
in
two
the near
steps,
future.
right? You make the application, and then there's another step where you actually pull a trigger to approve the
execute
funding.
it.
And I just wonder if the timing will be an issue,
So we can
waiting
move,
for the fall.
so we can move
If
forward
there's
as far as
serious,
construction,
yeah,
breaking ground.
That would be a
You're gonna-
concern, because you want to get, right, you know better than anyone,
Well,
get
yeah.
it started
if
before.
they get their money as quick as they hope, you don't want to be standing there in June saying, okay, we got all of our money, but we can't start because we don't have a bond until the end of the
Well,
fall, so.
I think, I agree with you, I think it's respectful to Mary to make sure she's on the call, and I don't know where she went, but it probably doesn't want to call in, and
She might be traveling right at that time.
can we just do it the day or the day after she comes back, or something like that?
Sure.
Thank you.
You could send out group emails to keep us all in the loop on
Yep.
scheduling that.
Yep.
I'd certainly want to be in on that conference call. And then, will the library, Fritz, do you think, be coming to us for putting out an RFP? Will they put one out independently as far as getting bids for that?
That depends. Classic way of doing this would be to wait for the architect to finish plans, then send them out for an RFP, which requires somebody to spend the money for the plans. Another way is to send things out for bid with budgets for items that aren't clear, which in this case is, other than the size of the building, would be allowances for flooring, allowances for cabinets. That would allow us to start that process in the near future, but in any case, I'm sure there'll be an RFP for either one of those. I can answer that better after Tuesday. I'm fond of the first method, but that was part of the reason I was reading this, because as best I can tell, that we really are the governing entity for how and when this gets done. So,
Both on managing.
but
the-
there will, I'm sure there will be an RFP for, and hopefully at least 3 bids. So, as to what's in the RFP, that may change.
Slightly off topic, hopefully it's allowable. Does it make sense to invite the library board of trustees to have a discussion about an MOA or at least a informal understanding about the disbursement of funds?
After we hear from the bond bank,
Okay,
I mean, that's a discussion that we won't have now because we don't have the bond input before the meeting, so that'll just get put off till later.
sounds good.
But I'm sure that's, that's a concern of everybody who pays first. And if it's lower than, say if it comes in under budget, who gets the savings?
I would think the town.
Or do you split the savings? Do some of the
I think
people not
usually
have to
it's
pay
be a
as much
split.
donation? Do they want to keep their donation and use it towards books? When people gave their donation thinking it's gonna be for construction. So these are all questions that have come to my
Well, the
mind
other
that we
thing
need
is
to talk
that
about.
part of it's gonna be for the building, which is gonna be still owned by the town. And there's a small portion of it that's going to be for interior stuff, which may be, you know, furniture and other things. Which, are those gonna be owned by the town, or are those owned by the library? And are they part of this process? Because they were talking about part of the money going towards renovating the old and combining it with the new.
What's the definition of a shelf with books on it? Is that a permanent fixture or is that a piece of furniture?
That's something that has to be, depends on if it's got one screw holding it on the wall, probably.
I'm glad you both have your liquor license, because we may need some too.
Yeah, we're so samples we were talking about. So anyway, there's a bunch of questions that are gonna come up,
Yeah.
but I'm sure this is gonna be a work in progress.
So that being said, I guess we'll just leave some fungible space in each meeting to be able to fit this in. And if we do that, I'll just have Dean let you know that we've changed it, you know, added the library piece to the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm planning to proceed as though this is gonna start next week. I just don't wanna be left behind, that's
Yeah.
all. I'm sure it's not, but
I mean, a lot of contractors are probably booked up already, but might make space for a big project like this.
depends, you know, you hit the person that really wants it.
Is there any other?
Well, I should have probably brought this up sooner, or maybe in the updates part or something. I think we need to look at the holiday personnel part of our policy, because there seems to be, not everybody's on the same page. For example, the town hall has set days that are holidays, the library can choose what days, and then the senior center doesn't have as many as the town hall, like Carolyn only has 8 or so out of
if-
12, but she's a town employee.
Right.
So
but
we
she-
need to
she
be
would
brought
fall-
up
She would
to
fall underneath the town
employee.
employee
Yeah.
policy, which would be
So I think we should
which would
just
be the
like,
12 instead of the 8.
We just need to resolve.
Fine-tune
I
it.
think you'll find this will answer some of your questions.
oh. Okay, very good.
Probably wouldn't take that long to clarify.
No, it wouldn't. No.
If you read the bigger,
No, the library just votes on theirs. They just, like 2 board meetings ago, set their holiday schedule, so
right,
that's
And-
their scope of work.
right, and they did set some, but they didn't set as many as the town has in their personnel policy. The town has
Got
more
that.
holidays listed than the senior center.
Oh, senior
Well,
center,
yeah,
yes.
Senior center, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe
then you
this-
just, one technique would be to give the employee, whatever that difference is, those many extra holidays of their choice.
They're given the personnel policy, so they should know how many holiday days they have.
Yeah, no, there's so many different ways to resolve this, but one is if we want to be equitable in number of holidays, we could give the employee the choice of, you know, you get however many the town gets, and you can choose your holiday.
Okay,
I mean, there's no.
Yeah, and they are town employees.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right way to do this, there's none.
So,
They pay double time out of their budget, or time and a half, double time if you work on holidays. or-
yes. It can be.
I'm wondering if we can, is Mary here March 25th?
She's
she
coming
back in
back on the
town?
21st.
You're not. So maybe, April 8th, do we have any room for it?
Not when you're talking about that. And you gotta realize that on April 8th, we are also doing the
Affordable housing.
the warning for the town meeting.
Oh,
For the
right.
voting, so we're gonna have the presentation or the little, little excerpt on what everybody's voting for.
Informational. meeting.
Informational meeting part of it.
That should be like,
Is that in there? Oh, on April 8th.
Yes.
Yeah.
So keep adding things to April 8th, we have our little informational meeting on that date
Yes,
too.
We have 15 minutes. Chop, chop.
There shouldn't be a lot of information, but, because it's just on an approved budget, so.
We have 45 minutes for the local emergency management plan. Are we really gonna need that?
It's hard to say. It's a new format this year. It's, yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, it might, it also, there are a couple items that I didn't put on there. One is the emerald, or the ash tree RFP, opening the bids and selecting a contractor potentially.
It's gonna be a busy night.
Yeah, well, that's at 6 PM, it says.
Is
bid
it on there?
opening. At least in the warning we just approved.
Right.
So that's kind of concretized.
I meant on the draft agenda.
Oh, yeah, but it says in the warning 6
Oh.
PM, so
Right,
it'll be 6 PM here on the
Okay.
agenda.
right.
I mean, we kind of have to,
Right,
which is fine, because we'll be back from our site visit.
yep.
And I'll bring my letter opener. Do it really fast. We could bump the decision to the end of the meeting. I could just open it so
Right.
that we don't have to amend that warning.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there might, Mark will probably be here, and I don't know if you.
Go
wanna
on now.
stay-
Well, hopefully, okay. Good. Hopefully it's easy metrics. So then we're looking at April 22nd, it's looking really full, based on the possible other items we just added with the capital budget, affordable housing, and consideration of the permit process for accessory agricultural uses. Which then pushes us into May for a personnel holiday discussion. Are we,
As long as
There's
it's
no,
not like,
it's
Yeah.
not Sunday.
right, it's just something.
April, May 6th?
No, 13th.
Oh, 2nd, yep, 13th. Maybe we could pencil that in? Just don't want it to drop off the radar.
Good.
20 minutes? Would that work?
Sure.
Sure.
Oh, yeah,
20
it's not
minutes?
gonna take very long.
Well, Mary, yeah, there'll be an HR piece, and I'll shoot for 15. There are warrants to sign
Already did.
while
I
we're
did.
all here. You did, great.
Nice job, already done it.
It's Monday. Nice. I'll be here for a while. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
All right.
See, it's not always me that makes the motion.